Good afternoon, fellow Shakespeareans. Welcome to our 50th anniversary annual meeting. Woo! I want to extend the warmest welcome to our special guest, stage and screen icon, and now honorary member of the SAA, Adjoa Ando. On July 14th, 2021, I lost my nephew to gun violence. We were very close. Because he was a poet and I do what I do for a living, we understood each other. He sent me pretty much everything he ever wrote. He often wanted to include the words of Shakespeare or classical poets in his verse, which I loved. He always wanted to know if he got it right, or more so, if I would be impressed. I have a pretty big family, but poetry was something that only he and I shared. His medium was spoken word, mainly, and he was starting to perform more regularly in Houston before his life on Earth, I bet you that's him, before his life on Earth ended. Lines like, "Now he's as thirsty as Thersites in 30 cities, while these kings challenge the god of Mercury only to be brought to their knees by Achilles," show how he reveled in wordplay, pun, and internal rhyme, while he critiqued the political moment. And like any Renaissance poet worth their weight in gold, he was inspired by those that came before him. I was very proud of him. It humbles me to remember that he was proud of me too. When he came to live with me for a while in England, he liked to tell complete strangers, "Hey, this is my aunt. She's the person at the Globe who knows the most about Shakespeare." I used to want to hide when he did that, without realizing the true rarity and gift of such a compliment. Since he died, each lecture or talk I deliver is done so in his honor and memory, so I dedicate this luncheon speech to Julian Karim. I'm thrilled to be standing up here in front of you all, my peers, colleagues, mentors, mentees, on this 50th birthday of our beloved organization, and with a battleship as my backdrop. As Lucy Monroe warned this morning, I'll try not to invoke Cher at any point. And that's a really great opportunity to say gay. I want to say thank you to the founders of the SAA, who 50 years ago created a vision for Shakespeare studies, imagining a future for our discipline where intellectual and collegial exchange would be a career high point each year and produce lifelong collaboration and support networks. The founding vision created the opportunity for a collective to develop who would share a deep passion for a writer, as well as for history, for theory, intervention, and debate. This would be a community beyond our own institutions. For some of us, indeed, SAA is our only organization, and the annual meeting a reliable space for academic rigor and amity and puppies in equal measure. Over the past 2 years, so much has been lost, including our ability to gather and to do so confidently. It's not always possible, even in a world with no pandemic, to be at every meeting for so many of us. Surely, with climate catastrophe closer than it ever has been, it'll be our moral obligation to find different ways to connect as we step into the next 50. But when we look back, we can acknowledge the remarkable achievement of the SAA to have fostered so much fruitful exchange, cultivating not only academic partnerships, networks, and careers, but also deep and enduring friendships. Sorry. Since the SAA was founded in 1972, many have given generously of their time, laboring unpaid, to establish and improve the SAA each year. So I want to acknowledge all the trustees and officers since its founding, starting with Leeds Barrel and G.E. Bentley, all the way to our current cohort. And I'm going to ask them to stand as I say their name. Natasha Korda, who was last year's president and didn't get to stand up and do her speech. Bernadette Andrea, Patricia Akini, Dennis Britton, Michelle Dowd, Stephen Guybray, who's unfortunately not here, Lucy Monroe, Jyotsna Singh, and our newly elected trustees, Ian Smith, Jane Huang Degenhardt, and Vin Nardizzi. And they're standing there representing all of the officers of the SAA. It's also vital to recognize that without the SAA staff over these decades, we'd have no organization, no chance for conferencing. So I want to say a special thank you to former Executive Director Lena Orlin and her successor, our very own Karen Raber. There is also a member I want to personally acknowledge for having attended every single annual meeting. Could David Bergeron stand up and be recognized for this incredible milestone? Fantastic. A few years ago, over a couple of single malt whiskeys, I asked an immediate past president, my dear friend and fellow Texan, the late Russ McDonald, what you do while you're president of the SAA. He said, well, not much. You attend some meetings, and then you spend the rest of the time shitting yourself about the luncheon speech. Well, I can report that he was understating when he said not much, but he wasn't overstating about the rest. I've listened to a good number of presidential speeches over the last 20 years, many of which have inspired me in a variety of ways. I recall hanging on every word Peter Holland spoke, or listening to Suzanne Gossett thinking, gosh, she's a phenomenal presence. I didn't know if I'd ever have the courage to stand behind that podium and speak with the same sage conviction. I still don't. The last time we gathered in person, the indomitable Ayanna Thompson, in her characteristically generous fashion, shared with us her thoughts on how instrumental we can all be in each other's successes. So I want to acknowledge all the members of the SAA. I'm grateful to you for electing me and this board and having faith in our ability to make something of this year. So I actually would like to say a few words about what it actually means to me to be up here. When I first started attending annual meetings as an early career researcher, I was incredibly intimidated, not just by the impressive lineup of Shakespearean rock stars I finally got to see, but also by the annual reception. Trying to get through the elbow-patched blazers to the buffet tables seemed a rite of passage at the very least. And don't get me started on the luncheon. I didn't know who the hell to sit next to. It seemed there was a set of secret codes for SAA socializing that I didn't have access to. Participating in a seminar with senior scholars and being afraid to speak up wasn't even the worst of it. Such experiences, I know, are not unique to me in my early SAA years. We can all relate. If you're a woman, multiply it by 10. If you're a scholar of color, multiply it by 10 more. If you're a trans scholar, multiply it by 10 more. If you're precarious as well, you do the math. There needs to be another side to this equation. So senior academics, if you're not already, please reach out to the emerging scholars sitting around you. Standing up here also means something to me because of my identity. For many years, I lived in a strange kind of denial about the impact my identity as a Pakistani American living in Britain has had on my scholarship and my career, and in fact, on most parts of my life. While I was growing up in Spring, Texas, I was teased for not being white, for having too much black hair on my arms. I was called camel jockey and terrorist. When I moved to England in 1996, I had to get used to the word Paki, which I was, of course, but not in the way it was meant when it was used against me. So I shied away from my ethnicity, from the labels and stigma I thought it brought me, and I tried to embed myself into the comfort of whiteness in the neighborhoods I grew up in, the schools I went to, and the higher education spaces where I trained. But as time went on, and as my own multiracial daughter grew up, I could no longer hide from myself because I'd be asking her to do the same. It's not lost on me that one reason for trying to disown my heritage was that South Asian representation was hardly in the forefront, whether it was in the media, TV, teachers at my schools, or professors in the universities I went to. I did not have many role models from my own background outside my family, which is okay, I guess, but not satisfying when I reflect upon the actual demographic of the cities I lived in. When I started attending SAA conferences in the early 2000s, I heard, saw, read, and absorbed the few incredible South Asian scholars who came before me and stood their Shakespearean ground in their fields, from the groundbreaking Imtiaz Habib to the fierce Anya Lumba and to my dear friend and fellow trustee Jyotsna Singh. It fills me with humility as well as pride to stand here in my own skin and speak to you today as president of the Shakespeare Association of America. Loud. When sitting down to write this speech, I of course racked my brains trying to think of an appropriate theme. Should I be witty and clever and have them rolling in the chairs, but I'm not Paul Menzer? Or just try to say something incredibly profound? After the past couple of years of disease, distress, loss, and reckoning, it seems impossible to find one single angle that could satisfy the diversity of interests and passions in this organization. So I wanted to share some thoughts on a question close to my heart, and given the work that so many of us do, I landed on activism. A student asked me recently, do you have to be an activist to be a scholar? Which is such a great question, particularly for these times. My first instinct was to say, no, of course not. You can be paid just to think. The world needs thinkers. We need experts who spend their lives trying to understand the past, the present, and human behavior within that continuum. As literary scholars, obviously that's what we do. We observe human nature across time as expressed through sublimity and aesthetics, and we comment on it. Yes, we need people who advance ideas and do so through the arts, like theater, and through the humanities. But this student's provocation raised many more questions in my mind. Do we have a moral obligation to be activists in this moment? Is this what our students need from us, whether we like it or not? How do we model action? And to what extent is action for change realistically possible through Shakespeare? How do we use leadership as a space for change rather than sit in it as a space for status and status quo? Alvaro Huerta talks about the scholar activist as someone who acts as a bridge between the academy and a particular community, cause, or group that is minoritized or disenfranchised in some way, and that the service we perform is toward the group, not to the academy. Even though it feels like the challenges we've been facing are now behind us, the world doesn't feel any safer for many of our students and for many of us. Not only is COVID still making the rounds, but brutal wars have started while other wars continue raging, or war crimes are happening in places like Yemen, Syria, Ukraine, Afghanistan, and in so many other places. The backlash against anti-racism and gender equality is not just harming education, but it is also hurting many of our colleagues in schools and universities around the country, not least in the state of Florida. Don't forget to say gay. We have daily battles too. Some are fighting workplace injustices, or facing institutional funding cuts, or more years of precarity, or a seeming endless stream of rejection letters. Many of us are personally subjected to different levels of racism and genuine societal oppression. So people are increasingly looking to their organizations, their universities, their employers for direction, answers, support, and care. But how should we ask for change? Should we just ask for it, or help make it by directly engaging with the discomfort of action? Activism is a crucial dynamic of teaching. Kathy Hitton observes that teaching involves choices that inherently produce transformative possibility. It is an inherently ethical enterprise. How to organize and facilitate learning, how to assess students and what kinds of relationships to establish with them. Every action is imbued with values, whether we are aware of them or not. It operates on multiple levels. Personally speaking, I opted to run for trustee because at the time the board was pushing for the kind of change I wanted to be a part of. The 2017 Color of Membership panel was perhaps one of the defining moments of my career, and thank you, Erica Lynn, for putting it together. It made me see I wasn't alone in my feelings of marginalization, even though I worked in an incredibly recognizable institution. But I saw a culture shift and politically inflected movement taking place that would make louder the voices of those who had been previously sidelined or unheard, and omitted even. In all honesty, how many of us read before, regularly cited, or placed on our syllabi the work of scholars of color, for example? This is a specific shift that I needed to see happen before I could recognize that leadership is not to be done for the sake of leading alone. Political activism is, of course, not new to our field, of course, but we must face the fact that as collegial and collaborative many of us have experienced our field to be, this is not felt by everyone. Inspired by the equity deficits I saw, I thought, ooh, maybe I could change the world. Well, maybe not the world, but perhaps at least the globe. For me, it was Shakespeare and race initiatives, inspired by what Margot Hendricks has called the critical legacy of pre-modern critical race studies, and the 2016 special issue of Shakespeare Quarterly, in which Kim Hall and Peter Erickson lay out a technique for advancing the field on a number of fronts, considerations of performance being one of them. Recognizing that the way we think about race in Shakespeare is inextricable from who gets to practice Shakespeare scholarship and perform in Shakespearean theaters is the foundation of this work, and is the reason why my work now leans heavily into activism. With my colleagues at the Globe and King's College London, Will Tosh, Lucy Monroe, and Gordon McMullen, we're not just creating a new research center for the sake of research alone, but we hope to create a vision for Shakespeare studies that speaks to the scholar-activist approach to inclusive pedagogy, research, and scholarship. We all should be asking ourselves, how do we help build the kind of pipelines that don't destroy nature, but that instead help open doors to a discipline that is so capacious and generative that it is absurd, entitled, and unethical to continue to think there's not enough room. Creating a collective is an active approach to scholarship. Our founders knew that when they set up the SAA. It feels perhaps quite similar to that moment right now in trying to rebuild ourselves after the last 2 years of no conferencing. And it has been a long road to get the virtual pre-conference, the in-person meeting up and running. And there are many, many people to thank for all the time and effort that they have put into making this week run smoothly. The program is packed with a range of seminars, panels, and workshops that would make Florida state legislators wet themselves with panic. So this is the point at which I ask us to express our gratitude. If you are here and I call your name, please stand up to be acknowledged by your community. First, the 2022 Program Committee, chaired by Lucy Monroe and Joyce Green McDonald, and consisting of John Garrison, Elizabeth Kolkovich, Catherine Prince, and Penelope Geng. Thank you also to our Digital Strategies Committee, chaired by Liza Blake, consisting of Lubaba Al-Azami, Jen Boyle, Dorothy Kim, Andy Silva, and Eliza Tersigny. We're so grateful to the Local Arrangements Committee, Terry Boris, Charlotte Artez, Sheila Kavanaugh, Vernon Dixon, Michelle Dowd, Jennifer Flaherty, Sajata Iyengar, Elizabeth Rivlin, Lisa Starks, James Sutton, Gary Taylor, and Eric Vivier. Without the SAA staff, we'd have no activity over this pandemic, nor would we be here at this beautiful luncheon. So I want to say a huge thank you to Beatrice Lee, Donna Evan-Kessif, Anne Freeman, Anna Hegland, and our extraordinary Karen Raber. Thank you to you all for standing by the SAA over the last 2 years. It's been such an honor to serve as your president this past year. You've enabled me to work alongside phenomenal colleagues on the Board of Trustees. Through all this, I have been inspired by the calming intelligence and guiding light of someone I know to be a compassionate, wise, and inspiring leader for us all. So please welcome your new president, Bernadette Andrea.
I didn't expect those words, so I'm wordless for a moment. So I did want to say thank you, Farah, for your grace, your generosity during the past year, your leadership that has led us to this moment, the roadmap you lay out for us, what must be done. And I look forward to working with you next year as past president. You're not going away. And in addition to all of the thanks that Farah offered, I second them. And I also want to add thanks to the hotel staff who have made this meal possible, have made this gathering possible. Some of those staff are with us in this room. Some of the staff are behind the scenes preparing this incredible food and for the reception, so I want to thank them as well. So as vice president, and I guess I'm past vice president of SAA, but as vice president of SAA and chair of the Dissertation Award Committee, I have the privilege and pleasure of closing these proceedings with announcements of the various awards SAA offers to recognize the innovation and excellence of its members. We wish we could recognize more of the stellar applicants who applied to these awards, and we honor the research, teaching, and community engagement of everyone who shared their work with us. And we invite the rest of you to submit your applications for next year's awards. I want to begin first by acknowledging the various awards committees. It's a labor of love, but it is labor. So please join me in thanking those SAA members who gave their time, knowledge, and enthusiasm to reading and discussing these applications. Simone Chess, Kevin Curran, Natasha Gorda, who wears multiple hats, Roanne McKenzie, Carol Mejia Pearl, Gretchen Minton, Vin Nardizzi, Paul Prescott, and Bruce Smith. And we'll be contacting you over time. You'll rotate in, so wait for our email. I'll turn first to the SAA Shakespeare Publics Award, which recognizes pioneering and/or culturally significant efforts to foster, engage, support, and sustain broad and diverse Shakespeare publics through teaching, scholarship, performance, and/or activism. This year's award was given to 2 projects. The first award, and this is in no particular order, goes to Scott Jackson, who I know is here, and if you could stand, please, if you're comfortable, for the Shakespeare in Prison Conference, with acknowledgement of Freedom Bradley Ballantyne, Melinda Cooper, Karen Ann Daniels, Kurt Toppland, and Precious Wilson Gay, and there is more information about this project in the book exhibit room. And the second award, the second top award for this prize, goes to the Black Shakespeare course, which was developed by Patricia Akimi, David Sterling Brown, Shanta Bryant, Noel Kamen, Donaye Moore, Peggy O'Brien, Amber Phelps, our own Ian Smith, our incoming vice president, and Miriam Trowell. And it was developed by the Folger Shakespeare Library in partnership with reconstruction.us. The SAA Innovative Article Award recognizes an outstanding scholarly article that leads the field of Shakespeare studies in new directions through creative and innovative scholarly approaches and methods. And I am so excited to share that this year's award goes to Colby Gordon, who I've been seeing around and reading your tweets, for A Woman's Prick, Trans-Technogenesis in Sonnet 20. Thank you, Colby. The committee also named 3 runners-up from a robust field of applicants, and this is in alphabetical order. Urvashi Chakravarti for Live and Beget a Happy Race of Kings. Richard III, Race and Homo Nationalism. Laura Estill for Shakespearean Extracts and the Misrepresentation of the Archive. Gillian Knoll for Coitus Magicus, Erotic Attracting in a Midsummer's Night Dream. Yay! And now you need to go and read all of those articles. The Dissertation Award Committee was tasked this year with adjudicating the residential fellowships the SAA shares with the Folger Shakespeare Library and the Huntington Library. And we thank both of those institutions for their partnerships. This year's SAA Folger Fellowship went to Patricia Akimi for illustrating Othello. And this year's SAA Huntington Fellowship has 2 recipients, 2 top prizes. Again, in no particular order, Lauren Shook for A Place at Shakespeare's Table, and Christine Vernado for Queering Birth, Queering Death, The Problem of Life in Literature. So you can look for their books in due course on those, one of their, their second and third books. Last but not least, out of a very strong pool of applications for the Leeds Barrel Dissertation Prize, the committee awarded an honorable mention to Emily Lathrop for Paratheatrical Shakespeare, Audience Engagement, Universality, and the Shakespeare Industry in the United States. We all need to read this when it comes out. And the committee awarded first prize to 2 dissertations. So again, in no particular order. The first prize goes to Bernadette Myers, Urban Ecology and the Early Modern English Stage. Even the committee doesn't know the names. Congratulations. And to Nicole Chirico's Imitating Difference, Renaissance Entertainment Culture, and the Ethics of Popular Form. And I know you're here, Bernadette, and if Nicole is here, could either or both of you come to the stage and receive your check? Wonderful. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to meet you. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you so much for your dissertation. So to close my speech, but not our time of conviviality together, I want to announce a new award starting next year, the SAA First Book Prize in honor of Jerry Zingerman. And you'll learn more, you'll receive emails, and we'll be posting details on the website. And I want to, before I proceed further, thank the generous donors who made this award possible. So thank you very much. And speaking of next year, we will hopefully gather in Minneapolis, Minnesota from March 29th to April 1st for the dawn of our next 50 years, for the 51st annual meeting of the Shakespeare Association of America, which is also the 400th anniversary, as I know many of you know, or if not all of you, of the first printing of Shakespeare's folio, so of the printing of the first folio. So please stay tuned for events celebrating these milestones. Finally, don't miss this year's eagerly awaited plenary panel, 50 Years of Early Modern Critical Race Studies, which starts at 3:30 today in Grand 528. So we'll see you there and at other events celebrating the 50th anniversary of SAA.